You ever wonder why that big government project in your town seems to be stuck in neutral? Or why policies seem to flip-flop out of nowhere? Well, it turns out there's this hidden reason, and it's probably not what you think. It's got less to do with money or bad plans and everything to do with something called bureaucratic churn. So let's get into it. This is a huge issue that affects pretty much everyone, but almost nobody talks about it.
Okay, just listen to this quote. Incompetence by design. I mean, wow. Think about that for a second. That's a pretty shocking thing to say, right? How could any system actually be designed to fail? This idea, this puzzle, is really what we're digging into today. It's suggesting that the constant shuffling of public officials isn't just a little inefficient. It's a system that might actually be built to prevent success.
All right, so to really get our heads around this, we need to look at how it actually works. Think of it like a revolving door for government officers. One person comes in, another goes out, and it just keeps spinning, sometimes so fast it's hard to keep track.
So the official name for this whole thing is bureaucratic churn. And, we're not talking about someone getting a promotion for doing a great job or being moved to where they're needed most. Nope. This is about routine, constant transfers of important people, often with zero public explanation. And what's really key here is that nobody seems to be checking what impact this has on all the important work that gets left behind.
And just look at how this plays out in reality. For the first, say, 3 months, a new officer is just trying to figure out what's what, learning the ropes. By about month 6, they're finally starting to see what the real problems are. And right at that moment, when they might actually be able to do something about it, poof, they're gone, transferred out, maybe after a year, maybe a bit more. And the whole cycle just starts all over again with the next person.
The whole process is basically a black box. You're left asking, wait, why was that person moved? Who picked the new one, and why? And maybe most importantly, what's going to happen to that school or that water project they were in the middle of? You just don't get answers. And when it's that opaque, it really makes you think this whole system is more about serving some short-term political game than what the public actually needs long-term.
Okay, so let's talk about the real-world cost of all this. Because this instability, it's not just some internal government headache. It has these 4 huge and, honestly, pretty devastating consequences that end up affecting every single one of us.
First up, expertise just evaporates, vanishes into thin air. Just imagine a health secretary who spends an entire year getting deep into all the complex public health issues in a region, and then bam, they're suddenly moved over to the finance department. All that incredible specific knowledge they built up is just gone from the health sector, and now they have to start all over again from square one in a totally new field.
Number 2, continuity is completely shattered. So a new officer walks in, and of course they have their own ideas, their own priorities. That brilliant 5-year plan for building new roads that the last person championed, well, that's probably getting pushed to the back burner. Progress doesn't just stall. It's like someone is constantly hitting the reset button, taking everything back to zero.
Third, and this one is huge, accountability just disappears. Think about it. If a big project fails 3 years after it started, who do you blame? The person who kicked it off? The second person who took over? Or the third person who was there when it all fell apart? When everyone is just passing through, it becomes impossible to hold any single person responsible for anything.
And finally, all of this leads to maybe the most damaging result of all. Real, meaningful reform becomes basically impossible. I mean, tackling the big stuff, like fixing education or transforming agriculture, that takes years of dedicated, focused work from someone who knows what they're doing. But with this constant churn, that kind of long-term commitment is just a total fantasy.
So what we're left with is basically a system of governance that actually runs on instability. But here's where it gets really wild. Let's compare this chaotic reality to what the experts say is the standard for how things should be done.
There's this group, the Administrative Reform Commission, that literally studies how to make government work better. And they are crystal clear on this point. For an officer to actually be effective, to really learn the job, make a solid plan and see it through, they need to be in that post for a minimum of 3 years. Not 6 months, not a year and a half, 3 years.
And this right here just shows you the massive disconnect. On the one hand, you have the reality in a place like Meghalaya, where officers are in a job for just 6 to 18 months. And on the other hand, you have that recommended minimum, 3 years. That huge gap you see between what's happening and what should be happening, that's where good ideas, progress, and accountability all go to die.
So it's really easy to hear all this and just feel kind of powerless, right? It seems like such a massive, systemic problem. But here's the thing. Just knowing about it is a huge first step.
And the next step is starting to ask the right questions. So let's talk about what you can actually do about it.
All right, this brings us to the final part, and it's all about action. This is where you get to switch from just being an observer of the problem to becoming an investigator. You can actually use a few simple questions to start challenging this whole culture of instability.
It really comes down to 3 straightforward steps. First step, ask. Just ask. Find out what the average tenure is for the heads of important departments in your area, like health or finance. Second step, verify. Pick a big local project that you really care about and do a little digging to see how many different people have been in charge of it since it started. I bet the answer will surprise you. And finally, the third step, challenge. Once you have that information, use it. Demand that the government create a clear policy for a minimum 3-year tenure, just like the experts recommend.
And really, that leaves us right back where we started, with the one question that cuts to the heart of it all. It doesn't matter if we're talking about building a new hospital, fixing our schools, or just getting clean water to a community. How can we possibly expect any complex, important program to work if the leaders in charge never, ever stay?